大家好, I'm Martin, and this is Short Stories, brought to you by the Taichung Keda Language Center. Today's short story is called The Devil's Sooty Brother. It is number 100 on the Grimm's Brothers list of stories. Now, this story I found interesting because it has a bit of history to it. It's about a soldier who comes back from the war and he finds that he has nothing and no place to live and no money. This was a common story. In fact, there are many stories like this in the Grimm's Brothers list, and I have read most of them and kind of combined them together into one story here. So this one has a historical context to it that I found interesting, but it also has a moral context and moral theme that is also quite interesting. So I hope you enjoy my version of The Devil's Sooty Brother. Let's begin by looking at the vocabulary. Vocabulary. Mercenary. Mercenary. The dictator used mercenaries to suppress the rebellion. Regiment. Regiment. The general watched the regiment as they trained. Spotless. Spotless. She cleaned the kitchen until it was spotless. Tend to. Tend to. The farmer tended to the injured animal. Condition. Condition. One of the conditions of the contract is that we must share intellectual property rights. Contract. Contract. The government signed a contract with the company to build the new bridge. Seal the deal. Seal the deal. The two countries sealed the deal on a new trade agreement. Get the better of. Get the better of. Pandora's curiosity got the better of her, and she opened the lid and looked inside. Victim. Victim. This charity group provides support to victims of crime. Deteriorate. Deteriorate. The doctors became worried when her condition deteriorated. From about 1470 to 1600, Europe was constantly in conflict. Many kings, dukes, and lords fought each other over large swaths of territory. To fight these battles, many hired German mercenaries called Landsknecht. This is a story about one of these mercenaries. Hans was a soldier who had served in a regiment of Landsknecht called the Black Band. Hans chose to join them because he was poor and liked the idea of money. He even volunteered to serve in the front line in order to receive double the pay. Like many soldiers, Hans did not put too much thought into the future, and he spent nearly all of his money. Now that he was back in Swabia, he was homeless, penniless, and friendless. While traveling through the Black Forest, he bumped into a little old man. This old man had long hair, a beard that stretched down to his knees, and incredibly long fingernails. However, he was strangely clean. There wasn't a speck of dirt on him, and his hands were spotless. The two looked at each other. Then the old man said, "You look like you could use a job. How would you like to get rich?" Hans liked the sound of that. "Follow me," said the old man, and he escorted Hans down into a nearby cave. "You live down here?" asked Hans. "Oh, for many years now," said the old man. Inside the cave was a large chamber that was lit by 3 large fires. On top of each fire was an enormous cooking pot with a lid. The old man explained the job to Hans. You must tend to these fires, make sure they never go out, and clear out the ash once a day. Hans thought that sounded easy. But there are 3 conditions, warned the old man. First, you must work for me for 7 years. Hans thought that was a little long, but not longer than his military contract had been. Second, you must never cut your hair or nails. That sounded strange to Hans, but he was used to rough living, so he agreed. Finally, you must never look inside the pots, or you will be sorry. Hans agreed to all the terms, and they shook hands to seal the deal. 2 years went by, and Hans didn't complain. The work was simple and routine. In fact, it was boring. It was so boring that his curiosity got the better of him, and he looked inside the first pot. To his surprise, he saw his old sergeant inside. I thought you died at the Battle of Marinano, said Hans. The sergeant did not answer. Well, 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 once I was in your power, and you treated me harshly. Now you're in my power. How the tables have turned, said Hans. He closed the lid and put extra coal in the fire. 2 more years went by, and Hans became curious again. He opened the second lid and saw a couple of his comrades inside. This saddened Hans a little. Although he did not know these 2 particularly well, he felt sorry for them. You were once in the sergeant's power. Now you are in mine, said Hans as he closed the lid. He continued his work, but he did not put so much coal in the second fire. Another 2 years went by, and Hans couldn't contain his curiosity anymore. He peeked inside the third pot. Inside, he found something truly shocking. All of the people he had killed. There were a dozen Swiss soldiers with bullet holes and stab wounds, but worst of all were the terrified faces of the Italian villagers. The Black Band had butchered a small town, a fact that Hans had tried to forget. But now he was staring face to face with his victims. He dropped the lid and huddled in the corner, crying. Just then the old man returned. He saw Hans crying and said, You looked inside the pot, didn't you? I warned you. Then the old man walked over to Hans and slapped him and said, Get back to work. Our contract was for 7 years, and 7 years is what I will get out of you. Hans picked up his broom and started sweeping. The final year of service went by very slowly. Hans was completely miserable the whole time. His appearance deteriorated too. His hair became long and shaggy. His beard was knotted and scratchy, and his nails were so long that they started to curl. His clothes were tattered and dusty too. On the last day, the old man gave Hans a backpack and ordered him to fill it with ashes. He said, That is your payment. Now go. As soon as Hans left the cave, his backpack suddenly became very heavy. He looked inside and discovered that the ashes had turned into gold coins. Hans walked to the nearest town and found an inn. He approached the innkeeper and asked for a room. The innkeeper was disgusted by Hans' appearance and asked, Who are you? Hans answered, I am the devil's sooty brother. The innkeeper at first refused to give Hans a room, but when Hans showed him the bag of coins, he changed his mind. Hans didn't bother to wash himself before falling asleep. He was too tired. In the morning, he discovered that his bag of coins was missing, along with the innkeeper. Hans didn't care. He didn't care about anything anymore. He walked to the nearest bridge. He looked at the frothing water below and jumped off. There is an old proverb that goes, He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. Now it's time for the listening questions. Question 1. Why did Hans join the black band? A. He wanted to travel. B. He was drafted. C. He wanted to serve his country. D. He wanted to be rich. The answer is D. He wanted to be rich. Question 2. What was the third condition of Hans's contract with the old man? A. He had to work for 7 years. B. He couldn't cut his hair or nails. C. He couldn't look inside the pots. D. He had to fill a bag with ashes. Well, A was the first condition, B was the second, so our answer is C. He couldn't look inside the pots. Question 3. What was in the second pot? A. His old sergeant. B. His old teammates. C. The people that he had killed. D. The innkeeper. The answer is B. His old teammates. Question 4. Who is the devil's sooty brother? A. Hans. B. The old man. C. The innkeeper. D. The sergeant. The answer is A. Hans is the devil's sooty brother. Well, that's the end of today's story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Thanks once again, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.